Time to start the work. Well, I mean, you can tell I've already taken it out, but, start to make this thing nice again. This is that Mesa Boogie Studio 22 from the Caliber series. And almost everything you see here is getting replaced. I'm going to start with the really fun stuff, and that is just getting layer upon layer of dirt and schmoo and yuck off the back, so all my solder connections will be clean going forward. So we're gonna get the squirt bottle of isopropyl, but if you squirt, it leaks out of here, so nothing in this world is perfect. So just starting with isopropyl and this old toothbrush, try to break through as much of the crusties as possible. You can see in this area there's a lot of heat. Been a lot of heat. Hopefully there's not any heat damage as opposed to, as far as anything developing carbon paths. I will be checking, but I've got to get a lot of old flux and yuck and dust off before I can do anything real. There's a little bit of silicone here. A cap had been put on the back of the board. Maybe I should use a razor, but my thumbnail is handy. And this is gonna make big brown stains on my lovely paper towel. Let's see how bad this is gonna be. This may need another pass. Look at all the excess tone I'm getting up. A lot of the vintage is disappearing into this paper towel. Oh no. Tasty, tasty tone crunchies. Such a lot of heat in this area. It's really not a comforting thing to see. The owner really likes this amp and said he doesn't care what it costs, he wants it fixed and brought back to be playing like new. Since all the potential heat damage is right there by the oppo tube sockets, if I need to do anything heroic, I may go to some chassis mounted sockets there. We'll see. Hopefully that won't be necessary. Well, he said do anything that's necessary and he doesn't care what it costs, which is a dangerous thing to say to a repairman in general. I will not take advantage of that. And this is not the first amp I've done for this particular client, so I think he trusts me. So it's up to me to continue to earn that trust. Be an amp tech, they said. It'll be fun, they said. There's a lot of stuff like this involved that people don't think about. There's also a lot of math. That's a lot better place to be. I'm gonna let this evaporate some more before I get started. Now I have a better shot of actually seeing what's up beneath all that old crusty yuck. I think we'll start with all these carbon composites. That just looks so tasty. That metal itself is charred on the lead. But unless there's an actual carbon path in the board in this area from all this heat, we should be okay. We'll find out. All right, a whole lot of work later. The larger electrolytics, in terms of the value and rating, are MODs. The other electrolytics scattered throughout are all Vissches. This one is a 3.3K 16 volt Vische. So physically, it's almost as large as these 30 microfarad 500 volts. Actually, it might be a little bit larger, but this will all fit back in the chassis. All the stuff here in the area where there was heat damage has been replaced with new components mounted up off the board. So the 2-watt carbon films have been replaced with 2-watt metal films, not carbon films. The big 2-watt carbon composites that were all charred have been replaced with 2-watt metal films. The 1-watt screen grid resistor has been replaced with 3-watt screen grid resistors. heater balance here, some stuff in the bias circuit. Actually, it's not the bias circuit, it's a different negative circuit. The bias stuff is over here. New diode here. New dropping resistors here and there. All the tantalums and old electrolytics and cathodes have been replaced. The larger values with these Vichys, the tinier values with these. These are also Vichy or Chemet, I don't recall, little axial film caps. Those are like 0.47s. Crucially, all the 400 volt orange drops have been replaced with 630 volt Panasonic ECQs, and they're mounted up off the board because there are a lot of traces that span beneath, and I don't trust the conformal coating on these Mesa boards to actually provide much insulation. And even aside from insulation, that distance is good, and these will be nice and solid. They're very low mass, so even though they're up in the air a bit, they're not going to be vibrating or coming loose. A lot of the old solder joints, let me flip it over. Oh, before I do that, all the tube sockets have been cleaned about 4 times. The pot exterior has been cleaned with alcohol, and the insides cleaned with deoxit followed by Fader lube. And deoxit was used to clean up the input jacks as well, which seem to have good tension now. You can see various bits of yuck that came off onto the paper towel. That's why I have paper towel for things like this. I don't want to get all this yuck on my bench. You can see the heat discoloration. I can't do anything about that. But I've measured, and there is no leakage, no conductive path from pin to pin on the octals, not octals, but the output tube sockets. They're novels. All the tube socket solder joints have been reflowed. All the solder removed over here where the connections to the transformer, the power transformer are made. That'll get redone momentarily. It's still not pretty, but I've gotten layer after layer after layer of sticky, yucky funk off. There's still a little bit left to go. So I'll give it one more bath on this side and really scrub it with this toothbrush and try to get the remaining bits of old flux and yuck out before I put it all back together, which means this will need to sit for about 15-20 minutes so that all this yuck will evaporate. This is like the 5th time I've had to do this on this board. It was really gross. And that conformal coating they use just traps any particle it comes in contact with. It's just inherently a sticky kind of thing. After that, I'll do a quick dab. So much better than it was. But even after 5 cleanings, a lot of brown orange yuck came up on the towel. It'd be more visible once it evaporates. And while there's a lot of discoloration here, none of the traces have burned. This seems to just mostly be this is a darkening of the board material here. The rest of it is a darkening of the conformal coating. And I have no guarantee that everything's going to be fine once I put it all back together and power it up. But I feel it's safe to power on again. Of course, I have no knowledge of whether the tubes it came with are any good. Because as it was in a sorry condition. Anyway, I'll pop it back in the chassis. I say pop, I've got to reconnect like 30 wires to do that. So, and then we'll find out. Well, Shaznot, I've got it all put back together. I haven't put the knobs on, obviously, for reasons which will soon become apparent. You aren't going to get to hear it right now because my wife is on a Zoom call doing academic evaluations right now, and she would rightfully kill me. And it doesn't sound very good, So I put it back together. The output tubes were pretty much toast. 3 of the preamp tubes were really noisy. The mids pot here is very intermittent, and when that goes intermittent, you lose signal and the level ramps up and down. The other pots seem okay after a good cleaning. And crucially, at least 2 of the 4 Vactrols are not functioning. So the lead master volume is always in the circuit, and the cascaded stage is not fully leaving the circuit when it's not supposed to be there. So when you're on the clean channel, it hums, and the lead master volume is always there. So I have got 4 replacement Vactrols in my shopping cart, along with 5 JJ ECC 83s and 2 JJ EL 84s. And I spoke to Mesa Boogie just right now, a moment ago, and have ordered the replacement 10K pot because it is a long plastic D-shaft pot that is no longer sold through their website, and it was something that they ordered at the time this was made in 1988-89, and no other vendor has a suitable long plastic D-shaft pot, and these knobs have inserts which mean that they really only will work on a D-shaft pot. So that's really the only option. So with shipping, it was $16, $17 or so for that pot. Not too bad in the grand scheme of things. And I asked the guy at Mesa, who was very nice, if they had replacement plastic standoffs for this model. A couple of the ones here have gotten wimpy over the years, and one that holds the tube retainer off is broken. I said, well, if you don't have them, I'll just go through Mauser and DigiKey and see what I can do. And he said that's what we have to do now when that happens. And he didn't have any part numbers for the actual part. And he said most people just leave the tube shield off or zip tie it in place. If necessary, I would be inclined to leave it off. But some of these standoffs aren't that reliable. So I'm going to see if I can get something that'll replace them all without putting in stainless inserts and going to a huge expense. But I think the owner will eventually be very happy with this. But it's going to be about a week and a half before I get that pot from California, and probably 3 or 4 business days before the new Vactrols and tubes arrive. And once the Vactrols arrive, I've got to take it all the way apart again to access the 4 Vactrols, which are over here on the board, and 2 of them are stacked on top of each other. I may install the new Vactrols upside down, as it were, be on this side of the board, a little bit farther away from any heat, and a little easier to service should the need arise. But we'll jump off that bridge when we come to it. These things can be frustrating. It's a little bit frustrating to me that I did a lot of very careful, good work, and it's all hidden on the other side of this board, which still looks pretty ugly. But taking measurements, everything seems okay. Once I get that pot changed out, once I get those Vactrols changed out, once it has all new good tubes, there's still one other issue that may bite us on this model. And they do a very weird thing where instead of having a long tail pair phase inverter, they've got the grids of the phase inverter referenced to a negative voltage, like -2 volts. And then there's the bias supply for the output tubes, which is negative something. And that's often too hot or too cold. And if you adjust one, the other one goes crazy. And it's really hard to balance that out. They really should have done 2 different supplies if they wanted to do that, but they did not. So we will see how good I can make this in the final result. But at least I know it's not going to catch on fire, and all this heat that had built up over the years should be somewhat eased going forward by having the new components in there mounted off the board like I did. So progress of a sort.